Welcome to the Seeds of Wisdom series, brought to you by From a Loving Place with author Rachel Wolf. If you like deep, meaningful conversations, this is your place. So settle in and enjoy today's guest. Disclaimer: the Seeds of Wisdom digs into some deep subject matter. In order to plant a seed, we have to dig in the dirt. That's how we grow. If any of the subject matter feels like too much, it is important to seek your own mental health support. I did, and it's why I'm able to be here doing this today. Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Seeds of Wisdom. Today's seed is Heal from Within, and I'm so excited for my special guest to talk about this, Katie Beecher, who has a book with the same name. So let you introduce yourself, and that way we can jump right into this, because I know I have a lot to discuss with you because I've read your book and you tell so many wonderful stories. So with that, go right ahead.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Katie Beecher. I'm medical and spiritual intuitive. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. Been doing this for over 30 years now, dear God. And I've been lucky enough to be featured in Goop and Kourtney Kardashian's Poosh and all kinds of other things. So that's been really cool. And the way that I work is just using a name and age. I create a 4-page, very detailed report and an intuitive soul painting for each client, which I send before the reading. Then we meet for an hour and we discuss every single thing that's going on in a person's life that's impacting them positively and negatively, and talk about, the root causes for some of the problems, how we can build on some of the things that are going well. I teach them to connect their intuition, and it's a very complete, individualized process, which I like. And so we'll start there.
So how did you learn to heal from within? I mean, how did it come to you? Because in your book, you talk a lot about your story with it, and it's pretty amazing of how you got from healing yourself to being able to help other people do it.
Yeah, there were many times when I didn't think I would, live past 16. So to be doing this, I'm very, very grateful. I always knew that I had these strange and talked to dead people and just knew all kinds of things, and would hear voices which I thought were totally normal at the time, about like my parents or other things, and it really made me feel safe and secure in a pretty dysfunctional environment. And then I ended up developing an eating disorder. Believe me, it was very bad, suicidal, and lived with it for a long time, didn't tell anyone. But when I was 16, and I really think this is divine intervention, because normally it doesn't happen this way, But when I was 16, I came home from school and decided I didn't want to die. And I called our pediatrician without telling anyone. It was the first time I had told a soul, and told him what I was doing and asked for help. And he recommended a Jungian counselor. So Carl Jung's the bomb. Worked with her until I went to college, actually. And the great thing about Jungian psychology is that they're very open to things like mediumship and astrology and symbolism and myths. And it's all about using your intuition to connect to your higher self and find self-love and self-acceptance. And then from there, you become the person that you're truly meant to be. And so you're able to heal. And there's all kinds of Jungian psychology techniques for connecting to intuition and your body, and, in my book. But one of the most important ones was to look at the eating disorder as my friend instead of my enemy, and to learn to use it as a team member in my healing process. So that was huge. And yeah, it all kind of went from there. I became a therapist and worked very intuitively, and started accidentally channeling my clients' relatives during sessions. So before I started healing, I was very afraid of my abilities because I would pick up a lot of negativity, and the therapist taught me how not to be. But I still wasn't sure where that all fit into my work. And then when I started channeling people, I realized that I had to really incorporate this more. And I started exploring my gifts, and I learned I was a medical intuitive. Didn't know that until my 40s, so it's never too late. So that's the quickie summary, or not
I,
so quick.
well, I love the fact that you said, it's never too late, and how the things can come up, because some people think, oh, if I wasn't born with it, and it's not the way it is. It's sometimes a life event sets off something in motion.
It's so many things. Like, I knew I was born with a lot of these abilities, but I didn't know how to explore them. I didn't have anyone I could talk to about them, didn't know what to do with them. Um, Part of my learning process was joining a spiritualist church in Connecticut. And for people who don't know what those are, it's a group of people who believe that we can communicate, with people who have passed. And the basic premise is treat people the way you want to be treated. And it was absolutely wonderful. There's groups on mediumship, so I learned to hone my skills. I found some mentors there, and so that really got me thinking about, wow, I know this much. How can I know this much and just keep learning? So
Well, and I feel like a big part of healing from within is what you were talking about, is those divine interventions, those moments where it makes logically no sense that you would think someone would be, would take this step, but we
right.
do. And it's trusting
So
that. Will you talk a little bit more about divine intervention and what that means?
yeah, I mean, I feel like it happens to all of us all the time. And one of the, and I'm going to use the word mistake, and I don't really mean it that way, but kind of the reason we don't recognize them is because we don't believe in them, or we don't think that we're special or that it could happen to us. So, like, I tell people, even with mediumship, I can do it for you and I will be happy to. And, but your loved ones really want to communicate with you more than they want to communicate with a stranger. And so when you see signs, when there's, divine interventions in their life, in your life, in terms of like things,
Synchronicities?
synchronicities, let's try that. Synchronicities that work out really well. Timing, and maybe it's seeing butterflies, or maybe it's, you were told not to go this direction and there was a really bad accident, or, no matter what it is, the more that we are open to listening to not only our intuition, but the signals from spirit, um, the less we need to be in control and have that feeling of always having to be on top of things. And we can relax and feel safer. And, it's always a question of when do you step in and when do you step back. Um, but I think it really gives you a lot of freedom when you're open to spirit and intuition, rather than feeling like very alone and things are happening to you and you're not empowered, so that has made an enormous difference.
And I completely agree with that. And I've learned to use it even with time management. And I'm a person who is usually, my on time is at least 5 to 10 minutes early, when I'm going places. But if things happen and I don't get out the door, I trust that now.
Right, right.
Because one of the times there was a huge accident that there's a good chance I could have been on if I had left on time.
Definitely,
So it's
definitely.
those little things that I've just learned to go, no, I'm going to trust. If everything is going this way, it's because I wasn't meant to leave at that time.
It's true. It's true. But I think it's super challenging to know, when do you step in and take some control? Um, and when do you step back and be like, okay, I've been working for my agenda for a really long time, hasn't been working out. I'm making myself crazy and miserable. Maybe my agenda's not the way, and I don't know everything. So I need to trust, spirit, universe, God, whatever, and just be like, letting this happen. But I think I live my life through intuition, and it's still challenging sometimes to know.
I absolutely love hearing you say that because I feel like sometimes when people see other people in this field or in doing whatever their profession is, even me as a writer, they think that because we do these things, it's easy. And it's not. We're still human. Our humanness still always will come back in and, ooh, let's test this out.
Right, right. And having your own business too, because, I've always been a very driven person. And then there's manifesting and all this, and I think I'm glad I'm the way I am. But I'm also intense, and I also need to back it up sometimes. And there's been plenty of times in my life where I've had an agenda, and you just keep forcing it and forcing it and forcing it until you get sick, or you whatever, just you're blocked. And sometimes it takes a harder hit over the head than others.
Yes.
But, we've all
Yes.
been there. So
Yeah, I call that the getting smacked in the head with emotional 2x4.
I have a feather and a sledgehammer analogy. So yep.
And let's talk more about that, because that agenda piece is, I feel like, something that so many of us struggle with, and
Yeah.
it causes so many inner problems when we're trying to force an agenda that we're not aligned with.
Yes. And even like I brought up manifesting, and I think that really applies there, because you're like, okay, all you have to do is put numbers under your pillow, or make a vision board, or write things for you to see, and you can manifest all of these things. Which I believe in manifesting. I believe that energy is multiplied. So you can multiply love, you can multiply hate, negativity and positivity. Like, I totally believe in all that. However, if you are trying to manifest something and it's not working, you shouldn't feel bad about yourself, or you shouldn't not trust your intuition or spirit, because maybe that's not what's meant to happen, and it's a different direction or a different spin on your agenda. And so you shouldn't be down on yourself, or lose that determination, or sometimes you need to give up,
Mhm.
go in a different direction. But it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, or you're not like intuitive or whatever, if you can't manifest a certain thing.
Oh, it's such a great, well, so many great points, because I feel like people get confused with the law of attraction stuff, and then and so much of that, I feel like if our energy is not aligned inside, people get confused, because our energy at the core is what is manifesting. It's
Right.
not what we're projecting or pretending to be. It's not that agenda. It's the core energy. And that's where I know I've struggled, because if I have a little inner message going, saying
Right.
something to myself, and then my outer message is going, but I believe this and that, it doesn't align.
Exactly. And where I see it a lot, with clients, is relationships. Because people will come to me for a certain thing, or sick, not sick, whatever. And my guides will identify that they're in a relationship that is damaging to them, or a job that they hate, or whatever. And so they'll be like, but I love this person, and we've been together for this many years, and he's my soulmate, or she's my soulmate. And like, how do I give up? And I just want this to be. And I'm like, well, or they'll say, well, when I feel better, I'll leave. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
um but it's like, no, if you're not treating yourself well to begin with, if you're not being treated well, if all of that shapes how you feel emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So I get that you want the relationship to work out, but you got to look at all these signs. And like, if someone's not nice to you, if someone's hitting you, if they're withholding money, whatever the thing is, um maybe it's not where you need to be. So that's a really good example.
It is a great example. And there are so many physical ties to that.
Hmm.
when you're in those toxic environments and when you're denying the truth.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
this may be TMI, pre-warning to anybody who's listening, but I actually was with someone and I couldn't go to the bathroom in their house. And so I took that as I was full of,
Right.
because I literally was being so dishonest with myself about the relationship
Mhm.
because of I didn't realize it was codependent. I didn't realize that I was trying to be like a savior.
Yeah.
All things
Yeah.
that were really unhealthy for me. And
Sure.
all things that said I was full of. So, you
Right.
know,
Right. Yeah.
and when I realized that, it was such a huge aha moment. And I am not someone who tends to be unhealthy. So when things
Right.
happen to me, I do now pay really close attention
It's
where it's
important.
happening,
Yep. Yep. It's
when
important.
it
And
comes up.
yes. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my book the way I did, is because I wanted it to be like you taking yourself through a reading with me. But a lot of, each chakra or energy center in the body has its own chapter, because where things happen to you, like you said, has meaning. And if you're seeing a pattern of all kinds of things happening, like in the second chakra, for example, which is the hips, pelvic region, reproductive organs, all that kind of stuff, that has to do with relationships and money and independence, or codependence, career, female and male power. Like there's so many things there, and a lot of us have had trauma related to those issues. So it's not uncommon for people to have hip pain or infertility or PCOS or any, I could go on, but it's really good to look at where things are happening in your body, and then be able to identify the emotional and spiritual characteristics kind of, of that area, and be like, okay, what's underlying these symptoms?
Now, how much of what you do is a, a person's interpretation of what they see versus like a deeper inner wisdom or divine wisdom, do you think?
Um, every piece of information I get comes from my guides,
Okay.
either during the report or painting, and also during the meeting. My guides do all the talking too. I mean, I've been a therapist for 30 years, so of course that comes into it for sure. um, but no, it's all, I mean, there's a lot of practical information. It's really important for me to give people tools and practical things they can do and they can take from our time together. I don't want it to just be like super woo woo and then there's nothing that you can productively do, because a lot of people are faced with very overwhelming or frightening choices. Change is really hard. So if it's a matter of having trouble setting boundaries, for example, with your family, and that's impacting your health, I want to be like, okay, let's pick one or two things that you can do starting today, where to start taking baby steps toward that goal. So there's a lot of practical things, as well as looking at symbolism and spiritual links and emotional links. And but I've been told I'm one of the most non-woo woo people that somebody ever met. So I think that kind of, yeah.
I love that. Well, and I love that you mix the therapy with this, because it does ground and balance it out so that it helps more people understand.
Exactly. And a lot of these issues that, my guides uncover, it's serious stuff that people have never told anyone, sometimes like sexual abuse or something. So I think having a therapeutic background is just very, very important.
Oh, and that makes such a good point, because yeah, I've seen that happen where someone has told someone something, it's revealed, and then no tools.
Exactly.
And so then that leaves them in the spin. And that
Exactly.
spin is so dangerous,
Right.
without the tools to back it up. So I'm very grateful that that's the way you do
No,
because
and
it
also
is, it's so important.
it makes me crazy when people tell me that they've gotten a diagnosis from a non licensed professional, or that they've been told that they are healed, because it is illegal and unethical for me to diagnose anyone, or to claim to heal. Now, I'm a full believer in energy healing and all that. I love it. I love it. I
Mhm.
love it. But like, I will point out symptoms. I will say this could seem like XYZ, Lyme, hypermobility, whatever. And then people can verify those symptoms. And then I'm like, okay, let's get you to practitioners that I trust, who can then evaluate, do testing, do whatever treatment they need to do, and we'll do the work that we can do together. But that's a really important point. When I hear that a psychic has told someone they were sexually abused, or when a psychic has told somebody they have cancer, like, dear God.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So for this part of the segment, we are wrapping up, and so much has already been talked about, but we are going to dive even deeper and go beyond the seed. So if you are not watching this on YouTube, go there now at From a Loving Place on YouTube to see the full episode. Or if it's on Facebook, you'll see it in the comments below. There will be the link to the YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or anywhere else, you can literally go into the link that's in there, and the YouTube version will be in there. All easy access. So thank you so much for being here. And if this is where you stop, trust that you heard exactly what you're meant to hear. Now, so let's go deeper. Let's go. How did you get to really understand the voices?
That's a really great question. That's a great question. Um, at first, when I was really young, when I wasn't picking up, well, I always picked up good and evil. There was a lot of both in my environment, put it that way. So I knew that there were people, who were I was hearing were literally evil and not good. And so that didn't scare me. What started to scare me was when I was 10, which will tell you how old I am. The Exorcist came out, and there was all of this stuff in the news about demonic possession, and the theme song was on the radio, and it was just everywhere. And I really started to pick up a lot of negative stuff, which was terrifying. And so I tried to block all of the information that was coming through, whatever it was. I'm just like, I can't do this. It's terrifying me. I don't want any part of it. And it was through therapy that I learned that we are always protected. We are always safe as long as we are in a space of love. Um, we can't be attacked and then not be able to take that energy off, or you don't need someone else to remove that energy. It can be helpful, but you don't need it, um, unless you are actively pursuing negative energy, or if you're in a state of severe mental illness or addiction or something like that. You can be vulnerable. But I learned that we're always safe. So I learned that I was always protected, therefore I can then be open to all of the information that I was receiving. I also learned that negativity can scare people who are doing positive work. And it doesn't mean you have to be a medium. It doesn't mean you have to have any special abilities. But, and I truly do believe this, that, evil energy can kind of come in and create fear in your life, or bring in people who are dangerous or whatever, and try to keep you from being your true self. So that's something I teach. It's a whole other, can of worms. But um, so at first, when I learned how to talk to my intuition, I had no concept of what that meant. None at all. So I decided that I would talk to God. And that had always been a place of comfort. I thought of God as creating me, So there was unconditional love and acceptance, which I didn't know how to get, and safety. And so I decided that I would dialogue, with God and learn more about myself. What I didn't know at the time was that I was also talking to my intuition and to all my spirit guides. I don't know who my spirit, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I don't know the names of my spirit guides. I know who a lot of them are, but we all have a team, tons and tons and tons of them. And sometimes their voices sound different, sometimes they don't. But I have learned to just be open to whatever comes in, because like when I'm doing my reports, whatever comes there, I write down. As a human, I can interpret it and screw it up royally. So quick example, I was doing a reading for a 12-year-old girl and I heard tooth enamel. And I apologize to the people who've heard me tell the story before, but it's the easiest one I can do. Her tooth enamel. So my humanness was like, oh, she must have a lot of cavities. But I just wrote tooth enamel because I knew better. And her mom's like, that's really weird that you wrote that, because she has extraordinarily strong tooth enamel and has never had a cavity, and dentists don't know why. So good example of just listening. But yeah, and then I'm very lucky. I can see things in my head. I can feel, I can do smells. I can see word scenes, whatever, just because I've let myself be open to it. And that was something that has developed over time.
And the fact that you talk about that it develops over time, because it's not just all right there. You don't just get it and get to take off with it. Because I know some people will feel like they have gifts and then don't really practice them, so then they dismiss them.
Right.
And realizing that those gifts are there, that intuition especially, where we get those little nudges all the time, and when we're open to them, the more we get.
Exactly.
And it's just such a true gift. So let's talk a little bit more about from healing within. What is something that you tend to see in people that people hold on to in their bodies that they tend to be surprised about?
Wow, so many things. A lot of people are surprised at the physical manifestations of fear, but my guides just told me to say something else. They said to say that people hold on to the words from other people. So we are all born loving ourselves. It's when other wounded people, whatever, come into our lives and tell us that we are not good in some way, we're not worthy, we're ugly, we're fat, we're not capable, don't deserve something, we need to be fearful. A lot of anxious people pass on that anxiety to their children. They really hold on to the words from other people, and then they think that it's their own words. They think they need to believe it because it's coming from inside, so it must be true. And you can store that anywhere in your body, literally anywhere. It might be in your neck, and you don't feel comfortable expressing yourself because you were never seen or heard. It could be shoulders, it could be chest. So forgetting to breathe, or breathing really shallowly, not feeling like you can ever relax. A lot of stuff goes into the gut, where that's really your second brain, and we pick up a lot of emotional and spiritual stuff of our own and from other people in our gut. Hips, it's literally can be anywhere. And I think it's really fascinating that everyone expresses these things a little bit differently. So, and I'm not sure why, but it's really fascinating to be like, oh, okay, same experience. Like, you have foot issues and somebody else has got breast cancer. So it's really very, very interesting. But a lot of people, they're like, it doesn't surprise me that the trauma or the experience is affecting my health, but how it's being expressed and the degree to that it's being expressed is often very surprising.
Yeah, I was, it was interesting when you're talking, because I know for me, there's been some major word blocks in my life. And one of the analogies that has really helped me, that I kind of like developed over time, is I call it the garden of our soul. And seeing it as a garden, and seeing it as those, we've planted a lot of stuff that wasn't ours.
Mm-hmm.
It's planting and growing in our garden, but what we realize through time and through help of others and everything is that we can pull those weeds. We can pull that stuff
Like
out.
a gardener, I love that analogy. Yes.
Yeah. And we can pull all of that out, and we can replant and we can regrow, and all the new brain science is right along with us with that,
Right. True.
yeah, it's not, we are not condemned by our past, the way we've always thought in a pattern, from passed on to generation. I mean, all the studies on meditation and how it changes,
Yep.
the way we our brains function, so we can undo a lot of the damage.
We can, and I see that a lot in the current generation. You know, the young adults and the children who are, they're not content to just be like, okay, well, some adult said it, so it's true, you know, or I'm going to shut up. You know, I mean, we raised our children to be very vocal, which is, a good thing. Um, but they're not content to just sit back and not be seen and heard, or to tolerate stuff, or to, you know, I feel like they're all having a spiritual awakening, in not settling for just superficial and kind of BSE type stuff, So I think it's really needed. I hope that it reflects on our whole society. I hope there's a lot of changes throughout society, and even how we take care of our planet, and all those kind of things. I really put a lot of faith, in the newer generations.
I do too, and I know there, like, some of the older generations will complain that, oh, kids today, but oh, kids today,
I
really,
agree.
because it really is amazing. I think of the conversations, I have two teenagers. I think of the conversations I'm able to have with them, and I can disagree with them. I can think differently than them, but I love the listening to how their brains work and having conversations where their opinion actually matters.
I love that. We have learned so much from our kids. We have two daughters. They're 31 and 25, and from the time they were tiny, we just kept saying, "Wow, these are little teachers," And I love that they can be whoever they are, and dress the way they want and express themselves, and I love how welcoming and loving they are to people of all, sexual orientations and that kind of stuff. Because when I was in school, like, oh my god, if someone even looked gay, whatever the hell that even means, that doesn't mean anything, but if someone thought that, it was like you couldn't be yourself. It was horrible. And so, and I know it doesn't happen with everybody, we're from the Northeast, it's a little more liberal, but I just love that, and I loved having their friends over our house, and they were free to do whatever they, within reason, but
Yeah.
express their opinions and dress the way they wanted, and do things. And it was such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like they're not gonna carry, if they're able to vocalize,
Yep.
they're not physically carry the burdens as much of the
Breaking
past
the cycle.
generations. Yep.
Breaking the cycle. Yep.
And you see that all the time with patterns changing in family health systems.
Yeah. And in my family, um I don't have contact with most of them, for a lot of different reasons, a lot of toxicity. But I was lit when I started to stand up for myself and act differently and say, I'm not tolerating this anymore. I was labeled as crazy, and what's wrong with you? And it was like, thank God I had enough therapy and enough, strength and everything to be like, yeah, dude, it's not me. I'm not perfect, but there's a lot of stuff here that just needs to stop. And we raised our children differently than how we were raised. We actively broke that cycle. Um, so I think it's so important, to allow that.
When I had gone to college after getting divorced with my two went off with my two little kids, and I went back to college, and I remember my one of my professors saying to me, "You're only as sick as healthy as your partners." And so I took that as that means too, with any environment we're putting ourselves in, we're only as healthy or sick as our work environment. We're only as health and sick or as our friend environment. We're only as health and sick, romantic, wherever it is, because our and whatever energy we're projecting is coming back to us.
True.
And what I realized is when I really worked on myself, worked on healing from within and projecting outward my healing, the energy I put out attracted other people.
Yes,
And the people who were not healthy for me fell off.
it's true.
And even a narcissist who, if anyone has had issues with narcissists, know that they like to keep coming back, stopped coming back completely, like done, none, nada, still working all the other triangles that they're doing, except for me.
Right. It's so
Because I just don't have the environment for it.
And you know what? I liken that to what I said about how evil energy comes to us and tries to change us and scare us. Its tool is fear.
Mhm.
And so if that, if your energy changes, if your attitude changes and you're stronger, then people who have evil working through them or negativity working through them, they're going to be like, she's not buying this. She's not playing my game. So I'm going to take my ball and go home.
Yes. And it does sometimes get worse before it gets better because like your family, they'll attack at first, but then they just there's nothing because
Right.
there's
Yeah.
nothing for them to grab onto.
Mine were pretty stubborn, but crazy stories. But yeah, I was just like, you know what,
Yeah.
I'm not participating. And yeah, so for people looking to set boundaries, with family members who don't know how to set them, who are invasive, who in-laws, whatever. Yeah, at first it's going to be hard, and they're going to fight you, and they may reject you and abandon you, and it's not easy because you're putting their issues right in their face, and you're saying, I'm not going to change who I am, and either you can change or you can get out of my life. And so that's why it's good to start with baby steps sometimes. Maybe if someone calls you every day or texts you every day, you take a day to get back to them. Or you decide, I've had people be like, okay, when I don't answer the text, then she calls 10 times. Like, don't pick up the phone. There's things that you can do, and eventually they'll, figure it out or not. But even if you, start with baby steps, and you'll figure out, wow, I thought this was going to be awful, and maybe parts of this are awful, but I'm strong enough to handle it. I can do this.
I don't know if this is the same way it worked for you, but for me, when I increased my self-love, the boundaries felt more natural. Like I didn't feel like I had to push a boundary. It just felt like no. Or I could say it without feeling that letdown of I'm not going to feel worthy if I don't do this.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's why one of the things I do in every single session is teach people to connect to their intuition, because if you have a team within yourself, if you have love and acceptance and nurturing within yourself, it is far less important what other people are doing and saying. They can do their thing, but inside you're like, yeah, whatever. And that's how I healed. Like my guides, when I was getting better, they were like, with connection to intuition, self-love and self-acceptance, you can really heal from just about anything. And that's the core of it, because then you start changing how you treat yourself. You change how you look at illness, perhaps. You start changing how you look at maybe doctors' opinions who were not nurturing, or who were gaslighting you, or who, or you eat differently or whatever, but it all really stems from there. So
I agree. I completely agree, because when I am feeling really good and really confident, I am drawn and attracted to healthy food.
yep. Yes, yes, yes.
It's an attraction. It's not a, oh my God, I got a diet. It's, I am literally drawn to it because it's coming from a place of abundance, of love, rather as lack of I'm not enough.
It's so true. It's so true. And then you're also not eating to soothe those neurochemical deficiencies. So carbs, sugar, whatever, caffeine, alcohol, they create neurochemical changes in our brain. And so whether it's serotonin or dopamine, or there's so many of them, if you are making those yourself because you feel good, then you don't need those chemical changes to alter your mood.
Oh, you just gave me an aha moment. Because I noticed that when my teenage daughter is struggling, I tend to go for more sugar
Sure. Sure.
because I haven't put up that uh intuitive healthy boundary of just protecting my energy from what's mine and what's hers.
Right.
And yeah, so I was like, oh, okay, that's where it came from.
And a good thing to remember, this is not me, someone told me this a long time ago. She said that pain might be the greatest gift you ever give someone. And she was mostly talking about emotional pain, because if you are in enough pain and you hit bottom, or you're uncomfortable enough, you are going to know that you need to make a change. But if you're shielding someone from that pain and trying to keep them from getting hurt, or keep them from, getting let down or whatever, they're never going to have to experience that. And especially with parenting, like, there, you can love and you can be there, and they can know that you're there unconditionally and everything. But like, am I going to do this for you that you need to do for yourself? Yeah, no, you know. Um, so that's how we learn strength and confidence.
I agree. And it's such an important part of their journey to allow them to make those mistakes, to not
Yes.
try to hover over them in that way, but just to give them an open space to communicate what they're going through. Like,
Absolutely.
feelings are huge in my house. Is like, my kids know I cry.
Right.
I'm proud of my tears. I'm like, and if they're hard and more challenging tears, I'm like, I know a breakthrough's coming. That's what I was, it's my breakthrough's coming,
True.
because I know if I get there, it's because I see it as a cleansing of my soul. Those tears are cleansing when
Yeah.
it's those harder tears. And
Exactly.
there's always this brightness afterward. There's always that turn. And so I've learned to really embrace that piece and try to let them know that it's not a bottom.
Exactly.
You're just breaking through,
Yep.
because
Yep.
you have to dig in the dirt. That's how you plant the seed.
Exactly. And it's really important for all of us to know that we can express ourselves. We can vent, we can all of that, and that we're not going to be judged. Because, like, in my family, if I talked about something that was bothering me, or a problem with, I don't know, somebody else, married, whatever, that would get thrown in my face later, you know? And so you were like, why did I tell anyone that? I wasn't, they weren't being supported. They acted supportive at the time, but then later it's like, I don't want to hear, your unsolicited advice or what I should do or whatever. So it's really important that that our kids know that they can talk to us, and that they're not going to be judged, and for everyone to receive that, basically.
Well, one of the prayers I gave my daughter is, you know, please surround me with people who are for my highest good. So, and I told her, even if you get hurt by those people, it's something there to teach you for your highest good. And
Right.
it's trusting that. It's trusting
Exactly.
that if they're if it's a harder circumstance, it's to show you something within yourself that is not aligning.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Fully
yeah.
agree.
I just love that what you do. I'm so glad that you have a book that, because, you know, not everybody can afford the services,
Exactly.
but you
Exactly.
really do take them through the whole thing in your book. And I feel like anytime a person opens the door like that, if they are meant to have a session with you, the funds will show up.
Exactly.
If you're meant to meet someone because of something you read, that it just, people, the places, the things, they show up as soon as we become open to them.
True. Yeah, I really wanted to share everything that I've learned and everything that I've experienced, and this is the actual stuff, that I do during the sessions. And there's, no reason to hide it or act like I'm special because I do this. Like, we all use medical intuition every day. You get a stomach ache and you're like, oh, do I need to eat a cracker? Do I need to go lay down? Was it something I just ate? Do I have appendicitis? Whatever. So it's all medical intuition. We just don't consider it that way, but it's true.
Well, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. And if anybody is listening to this, watching it, make sure you look at the blog attached. It will have all her information. It will have the information about the book and to connect with her. So thank you, Katie. It's been such a blessing.
Great.
And just remember, if you're here, it's because you're meant to be. Make sure to follow the links that accompany this episode. You will learn a lot more about today's guest and see what they have going on now. You will also get all the links to follow them on their journeys if this seed resonates with you. Come back next week for another Seed of Wisdom. If you loved what you saw or listened to, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.